Hi, Achim from InnerSpace Explorers. Thanks a lot for all the feedback on the last video. Tons of mails and comments and on Instagram and Facebook. And so we just picked a few questions, and so this is kind of a follow-up video answering a few of these questions that obviously burn in you. And so yeah, again, Aaron, who's doing kind of an interview thing, I actually found that very, very comfortable. Instead of running through all of this by myself, having him asking questions and me answering them. So we do this again.
Hey, Aaron here. So Achim found me on the street just to interview him.
Lost puppy.
Yeah, exactly. So we've just got a couple of questions that you guys have put forward to us. So let's get into it. So the first one we've got is from Terry, and the question is, can you please tell us more about the scary moments? You mentioned a container that you almost ran into. Can we get a little bit more on that?
Yeah, as I said in the previous video, my biggest fear was basically bumping into something because I couldn't really get an idea of how far I could see, plus the travel speed. And I mean, I had no issues with a net or something like that, which was my biggest fear. But I had this shipping container, so I was scootering along there in blue water, so no reference. And I mean, obviously you're checking your compass, your time. I mean, you're kind of busy. It's not like you're just hanging there and enjoying the endless water around you. And then suddenly, I mean, the current's running like almost 90 degrees to you. And this shipping container, which was like drifting in about 20 meters of water, was just passing by pretty fast and me closing in pretty fast. And that actually gave me an idea of how fast I'm traveling and how bad the visibility was. I mean, still considerably good for being in the British Channel. I mean, compared to a lake or somewhere where you can't really read your instruments. But traveling with that amount of speed plus the current, it was still probably not more than 10 meters. So when I realized this thing, I had a very, very short time frame to fix it, which basically in that moment I was just pulled the scooter a little bit up and I went over it, so I didn't hit it, but it was pretty close. And I personally found it pretty scary because it was interrupting this monotone time just passing by, and suddenly there's something, right? And then you obviously go in a certain alert mode, so you expect more of this to come, which then obviously doesn't happen. And so that was one of the moments. And the other two were that I had this big container ship and most probably a ferry that crossed my way. And also I was traveling in between 25 and 30 meters. This big container ship actually, the lowest point on the water is 22 meters below the surface. So suddenly it gets dark, it gets noisy, you get these terrible vibrations where actually, especially with the rebreather, suddenly everything starts to shake and you can't really hold it anymore, and you feel like, okay, there's water getting in, your mask slowly fills. One of the reed contacts that trigger the scooter suddenly went off, and so I started to spin around and I was like, yeah, that's probably a bit too much. And that's when I actually went down. Just trying to kind of escape because you don't know how close it is. Again, you have no real feeling for distance. So I went down, I hit the ground at, I think, 54 meters. It's black mud everywhere. So I was sitting there, kind of in stealth mode, like, I'll see what's going to happen. And then the vibrations were so intense that mud suddenly, from the bottom, suddenly started to go up. So you could see actually the bottom start to shake, and the black mud coming up, and the visibility obviously goes to zero. So you keep clearing your mask, holding your rebreather and sitting there like, whatever that is, let's hope it stops at some point. And I probably took 2, 3, 4 minutes till that ship was gone. Visibility obviously stays like that. So then, I mean, the vibrations, everything stopped, and I started to rise again. And I think I went up to almost 18 or 20 meters till the visibility kind of cleared again, and I started to travel again. So that were actually the two most uncomfortable moments that I had during the dive.
Okay, so for you, you'd say more uncomfortable more than scared, or?
It's always, I mean, it's a different perspective now. It's a couple of years ago. The problem in that moment is that you do not really know what's going on. If you would know, okay, it's that ship, it has 22 meters down, just passes over me. You would probably just go another 10 meters deeper or something like that. But the feeling is so intense, and it's all somewhere around you, and you cannot really figure out how close this is, how real is the danger.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem with this danger and fear thing is always there's a rational fear, something that's real.
Yeah.
So if that woman is in a really bad part of the town at midnight, alone, that's probably something that you should be afraid of. If you're alone in your basement and the light bulb is broken, it's bullshit to be afraid. I mean, you might be afraid, but that's the fear that you should learn to overcome. Because it's an unreal fear. I mean, nothing's in that basement changed just if the light's on or not. So in the case of the channel dive, in that I couldn't really figure out, is it dangerous or not? It was just very, very uncomfortable, and you're in a situation that you had no practice with. You haven't had that before, so you obviously try to escape it, but you cannot really measure, is this really endangering me right now, or is it just uncomfortable? Looking back at it from today, it was very uncomfortable, but it was no real danger.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, flooded mast, scooter not working, all good, bad visibility, but nothing really bad.
Things you've all dealt with before.
Right, I mean, if let's say the water would have been like 25 meters deep and the thing goes down to 22 and you can't go deeper, then it would have been really dangerous, and then obviously a realistic fear to face.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So the next question coming from Paul. Why did you choose the KISS rebreather, and what alternatives were you thinking about, if any?
Snorkel. Well, as you might know, we've been experimenting with a lot of different rebreathers in ISE. So I had and I'm diving rebreathers for a very long time, so I was playing around with all kind of rebreathers. But there was a time, probably the 2 years before the channel dive, whenever I went for a private dive, I had like 8 different rebreather models in the basement, and if it was private, I always picked the KISS. Like, not really thinking about it, it was just I felt this is the most comfortable unit, the most intuitive unit, very simple construction, very robust, and it was just what I felt most comfortable with. And then, I mean, there was not a lot of changes to be done. It was very simple to put these 2 units together. The extended scrubber, I mean, no rocket science, nothing super fancy that you need. It was also basically all these parts that were laying around, and it's a bulletproof machine.
Yeah. And I mean, you are quite well known for being a big fan of the KISS rebreather over many others.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's again the thing. I mean, before I kind of settled down, traveling all over the world extensively, up to 300 days a year, I never had a real issue with the KISS. I mean, whatever breaks down there, because people drop bags in flights or stuff like that, you can always substitute it basically from the local dive store or the hardware store, right? So there's a very limited amount of parts that are KISS specific that you have to order from KISS, and then they're not really expensive. So the stuff that you have to have from KISS, you have your spare parts kit, but the rest you can take from somewhere.
Yep.
And that was important for me. Like, look at the counterlungs, for example. The counterlungs are these drinking bags.
Yeah.
And I can remember an expedition that we had in the Emirates, and there was this guy I can't remember, probably an inspiration or something, but with this special counterlungs, and they were fucked up during the flight. So there was no chance for him to dive because he just couldn't get these counterlungs in that short amount of time till the expedition vessel was leaving the harbor. So if it would have been my rebreather, I could go to the next outdoor store and just bought these 2 bags and for $25. And I mean, as they're so cheap and so common, you always have a few in spare, which you probably don't do when you pay $500 for a pair of counterlungs and you don't really need them. So it's one of the things that I like most on the rebreather.
Yep. Were there any alternatives that you'd considered, or it was always...
Not really.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Next question coming from Mike. Did you see any wrecks on the dive? I looked it up on a map, and I think that you should have passed some. Did you see anything? I mean, probably not with the visibility. It's not really.
There was a joke going on before my team that say, if you're delayed, you're probably not in trouble, you're just exploring a wreck. Unfortunately not. On the other hand, luckily not, because it was one of these obstacles. I looked it up on the web map as well. There's quite a few things laying around from World War II. And I wasn't too sure how far they rise up. I mean, if it's in the shipping lane, they're probably wire dragged or cleared or with explosives, whatever. I didn't see anything. Obviously, I mean, being in this murky water for a long time, you tend to start seeing shadows, like it's a little bit darker here, a little bit darker here. If you're an avid wreck diver, probably you dove in the Baltic Sea or something, you know that feeling. You're going down, it's dark underneath you, and suddenly it gets a little bit darker, and that darker spot then actually materializes as the wreck. So I thought a couple of times it might be something like that, but then obviously, as I said before, I mean, you really have to focus on the navigation, on the compass, so you don't get off course, so there's not that much space just like looking around. And so yeah,
what do you mean?
Nothing.
The Achim Schloeffel didn't have time to get a couple of quick wreck dives in there?
Not really, but it would have been cool to an extent.
Yeah, it would have been.
The only wreck I saw was actually a small, like a not even a ship, but a fishing boat that I bumped into while I was in decompression.
Oh, okay.
Just a small wooden boat that was laying there.
We have a additional guest wanting to join in the video. Okay, next question. So this is from Gunther. What did you do to stay hydrated? Food, etc., toilet? It's actually a pretty good question. I'm assuming I know the answer, but...
Okay, I had 2 4-liter water bags strapped on the pad of the scooter, so I was able to drink, close the rebreather mouthpiece, take that hose, drink as the bag's flexible, the water pressure helps, so it's not like you have to vacuumize a solid bottle, which doesn't work. So there are drinking bags. I had a big plate of spaghetti like 4 o'clock in the morning before I started to get some
carbs.
Some carbs, yeah. And then actually you take 2 Imodium, these anti-diarrhea pills, so you don't have any unpleasant things happening if you're in the water for a longer time. But that's what a lot of cave divers also do when you do long exposure dives.
Okay.
You take.
So you were just using kind of similar cave principles for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean. Yeah, it fucks up your stomach for a couple of days, but I mean, it's the price you pay. Nothing dramatic. And I mean, I looked at the entire dive a bit as a cave dive. I said that a couple of times. I just took it as an overhead environment dive. Go in here, traverse, go out on the other side.
Yeah. And so you didn't have any unexpected issues with that?
Clean suit, yeah.
Fantastic.
Obviously, I mean, you have the P valve, so that's not an issue.
Yeah.
And so I was good hydrated.
Very, very, very nice. This one coming from Penta77. I saw your other YouTube channel. Why do you not link them together?
Thank you very much.
Here we are.
Actually, the other YouTube video is obviously about my other business. As most of you guys probably know, I became a father 7 years ago. And as I spent most of my time of my life traveling around and not having a real family, I was super happy when that happened, and I decided to stay more home and find myself something to do that allows me to stay close to my family. And I turned my biggest hobby into a business. So I'm restoring these old runabouts, speedboats, and I have a YouTube channel, American Runabouts, which I will put in the description, a link.
If you're interested.
Yeah, and there's a YouTube channel. I just didn't link him because I didn't feel that there's any connection to it. But if you're interested, check it out. Way smaller than the ISE thing, but yeah.
Some pretty cool stuff that we're doing, so. Yeah. I'm allowed to say that.
Oh, of course.
All right, next question from Stephen. I saw some Facebook posts of you with a dog, our little friend. Is it yours? New? Show us. Here we go. What the people want, what the people have been waiting for.
Yeah, say hello. So that's Nala. She's a puppy, about 6 months old. She was in a plastic bag on the fence in front of the house. So yeah, the boys saw her, and then obviously it turned about the workshop dog now. So she's with us. Yeah. So
part of the team, part of the
team.
Yeah.
Yeah. Say hello. Say goodbye. Go eat something.
She's a bit of a princess, really.
Exactly. So yeah, my dog, new. Nala.
There you go. All right, Tim23. Why could you stay so long on that RB? RB?
Rebreather.
Rebreather. I thought the max is 180 minutes. Can you elaborate?
The 180 minutes are something that the manufacturer puts out there. It's obviously a liability thing. And how long you can stay on a rebreather there's a lot of factors. You have the temperature you're in, you have the work of breathing, you have the canister design, if it's a radial or a axial scrubber, the material you use for absorbing it, the amount of lime that you have in the canister, etc., etc., etc. So there's quite a few things. And I can give you an example. Talking about the KISS, I had a working dive that I did on a KISS, which was pretty stupid, but it was more like a test. So I had to remove wooden poles from an old jetty in a lake, and I did it manually with a hacksaw. So it was a tree log like this, and I was trying to hacksaw through that. And I did that for 45 minutes, really, really working hard. And the scrubber was all purple. And I could actually start feeling a CO2 issue. So I burned that scrubber in 45 minutes, breathing really, really heavily in ice cold water on top of that. So on the channel dive, intermediate water temperature was around 10 degrees. We had the scrubber extended to 3.2 kilos. And I was on the rebreather, I think, around about 11 hours. And the scrubber was probably 1/3 was purplish, and the rest was white. But I was just hanging behind the scooter. So no real exertion, no really heavy breathing, except for a couple of moments. And so that gives you good indications that there's no fixed rule about it. But obviously, the 180 minutes also coming from the CNS toxicity table, thinking about 1.3, 180 minutes is 100% CO2, 100% CNS. And so that comes handy and merges together. And obviously it's a liability thing because the manufacturers are very sure that you're safe within these limits. They recommend usually running the machines on 1.3, 180 minutes, 3 hours. That's the limit. But it's an artificial limit like a decompression table.
Okay.
Basically, it's the same thing. I mean, it's a guideline that makes you safe, but it does not mean that you can't go further, right?
Still just a guideline, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Very interesting. This one coming from Kendrick. How did you prepare to handle the fear? I could not imagine being alone in the black water with no reference. It would freak me out.
Well, it's not that you do a swimming course and a week later a diving course and a week later you do a 12-hour dive.
Yeah.
It's more a thing that, I mean, you grow into that. When I did the dive, I was probably diving for more than 30 years, and I had a lot of really long, deep cave dives, a lot of long, deep wreck dives. I just like being on the water.
Yeah.
And obviously there was an extensive preparation phase of almost 2 years for that. So, yeah, hard to say.
I suppose it's one of those things. I mean, you know, for me as well. I mean, with limited diving experience, something like that, it just seems. I mean, how would that even be possible? But then, I mean, when you adjust to it over time and you build up that experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's like for example, I'm completely afraid of height. So I did a couple of skydives.
Yeah.
But I never felt comfortable with it. So I could never even think about some crazy base jump or something like that. I cannot imagine myself doing that for no money in the world.
Yeah, a professional base jumper.
Yeah, but growing into this, so I have no real answer to that. It's just I grew into that. I mean, I started diving when I was 7 years old, and I have more than 10,000 dives, so it did not feel unnatural, let's say.
Yep. I suppose you wouldn't get too many inexperienced people trying something like this. And if they were, then that would probably not be so smart.
Most probably.
All right. This one is from Billy Hansen. Why did you not make more out of this? Book, film, etc.
Here we are.
Yeah, this is it.
I think I said it in the first video. I never had the public relation or the record or all of this in mind when I did it. So that basically answers the question. Book is a good point. My patrons actually know that there is a book, and I wasn't really sure what to do with it, publish it, make an audiobook out of it or whatever. But fact is that it's on a publisher. It will be published this year, so there will be a book. Once it's out, I will actually publish something here as well. I'm not sure yet if it will be available in English. So in the first phase, it will be published in German, but the book's there. And otherwise, yeah, as I said, I never really focused on that dive in having marketing in the back of my head.
I suppose, especially, I mean, a lot of the footage being lost from it as well makes it a lot harder to really do anything.
Most footage that we have is terribly overexposed, and that's I never had real focus on it, which was probably stupid, but I never just had the intention. So so all the interest that came afterward basically blew me off a little bit because I wasn't prepared for that.
Yeah. But certainly stay tuned for updates with the book. There's exciting times ahead with that.
Yeah, true.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that wraps up all of the questions that we have from the fans.
All right.
Yeah.
So, Aaron, thank you much.
I suppose it's lunchtime anyway.
Okay, thanks for watching. If you have more questions, please feel free to comment, drop me emails, Facebook, whatever, all the channels that we have. And I'm happy to do another update if there's more interesting questions coming up. We just picked the ones that basically covered all of them. There were more, but they were all kind of the same. And stay tuned for the next video.